Hello, it is me, and I have lost my mind probably because here is the quilt I am making for reasons. Because this is not one of these things that you make because you want it to be done like quickly. So yeah, a million years ago, dilly dilly dilly, I wanted to do a quilt called Ocean Waves, using every single, and also what's called a charm quilt, where every single square is a different fabric. Well, no, but I recently unearthed these fabrics again. Let me switch the camera around here. So, no, I am not doing every single square differently. Because there is going to be, when this is completed, literally there's going to be over 1,300 different individual pieces. These little triangles, squares, and then the bigger diamonds that show up on the edges. Here's one corner. I'm starting at the upper left corner. I love this whiteboard because it's magnetic, so I can do, it does exactly why I bought it, so that I could put patterns and you know, quilt blocks and fabric and stuff like that up where I can like plan out. So now I can see that if I continue going this direction, and so it's gonna be 6 of these squares by 7 the other direction. So now I can see, okay, the next block has to have this up in this corner, and this color here down in the bottom corner, and so that I can keep, you know, matching them up, like, see how these match like this. You get the idea. So here is the design that I came up with. It's kind of an original design based on sort of both Jacob's ladder, which is this, where you see the darker, kind of, it looks like a little ladder sort of, and Ocean Waves, which involves many more triangles than I'm doing here, because I kind of want it to be a mix of triangles and squares, and you know, lights and darks and mediums. And so anyway, so I sketched this out, and I, you know, added to where I could see more contrast of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So so it's kind of a mix, like I say, of Ocean Waves and Jacob's ladder. And I have some of the fabrics cut out already. Here's some of the corner pieces. I've broken them up into sets of 4 or 2, depending on you know, how many I'm going to be using in where in it. And so I've got all these scraps. So back in the day, way back when, I put out a call on the primitive interwebs and said, hey, friend pals that I don't know from around the world, I am going to do the thing. Will you send me blue fabric for this thing that I want to do? And so recently I unearthed all the fabrics that people had sent me, and this is only a small portion. I mean, you can see I've got dozens and dozens of different, and then I've been kind of collecting them also. So now it's like, now's my chance. So now I can go through all these little pieces and cut them to size. From these little scraps, I just basically can take, you know, here's my 2-inch square. 2 of these, when sewn together, make a 2-inch square, and that's what you need to do to make this all line up with these diamonds and squares. Here's a 2-inch square, this is a 2-inch square, but you need 2 half squares to make the square. Hopefully that made sense. And so you need to cut them out just a little differently. But for the most part, I either, you know, use a pencil, like a, you know, a washable, water-soluble fabric pencil, and just mark it and then cut it out that way, or I might literally just hold on to it and just hold it and cut it. Like if I have multiples, like I think this one I've got a bunch of, so I'm just going to hold it in place, make sure I'm on the correct side, although it really doesn't matter because it's symmetrical, and just hold it tightly to the pattern and just, you know, cut it up against the edge and snip these corners off. And the reason you do that is so that you don't have a lot of extra bulk that you don't need, because all you're going to be sewing here on this line. You don't need this whole extra corner hanging out, causing a, you know, bunch of junk on the back of your quilt. So anyway, so there you go, triangle, super easy. square. You know, you can just follow the line, cut it out, super easy. You can, you know, fold it and then cut out 2 at a time. So it's kind of fun to play around and see where you can fit your patterns in there. Speaking of the back, let me go get that. So here's what the back looks like. You know, you can see if you have even more than what's here already, you start running into, it's just too much material on the back, and you don't need all that because it makes it lumpy, frankly. So you can iron it towards one direction, you can iron it flat, depending on what you're trying to accomplish in terms of how thick these seams are. Like I start off by doing them flat, and then when I sew the bigger pieces together, I press them outwards to kind of evenly distribute where the bulk of the fabric on the back is so that it's less lumpy. And I'll show you how I sew them on my old-timey machine. Before I sew it on the yarn machine, what I have to do is lay out the block, and this is the one that's already existing over in the corner over here. So I want to match that, right? So that it makes that half of a diamond like I'm doing on the top edge, like that guy. So I have to first grab that, I know that much. But then I have to plan ahead of what this next middle one is going to be. That's going to be over here. So I'm trying to think, well, what color is going to look good to go along with what I already have? And it's getting kind of progressively darker. So I think I'll use a brighter color for the next diamond. So here's the one I chose. It's kind of, it's got a lot of purples in it actually, but as long as it's still kind of along the same color theme. And now I'm going to look at this as reference. And this is the top corner of the next block, because each of these diamond blocks is formed of 4 smaller blocks. So I'm starting with this corner here, and that's why there's so many. 1,386 pieces will be in this. 42 of these blocks in a grid of 6 by 7 to make a queen size quilt. Phew! So now I'm going to go with 3 darks in this corner. Let's see, what can I use here? Here's some new ones. I try not to get things too close together. Like if I've already used it, I don't want to use it again, because, you know, I mean, you'll see it. It's just like right there. It's like, oh, it's just the same one. That just is right over there. I don't know. I'm weirdly obsessive about that. So let's see. So now I'm kind of picking through here. What have I not used recently? And that's why I have that other one up there, is to try and figure out, okay, what can I use in this row that I know I haven't used recently. Then I'll double check this before I stitch this together too, to make sure I didn't accidentally put one of these right next to itself, you know, because that doesn't look as good. So let's see, and this is so pale, I think I'm actually going to go with kind of a medium rather than a white. I know this is showing as white and I don't actually have any medium triangles, but sometimes I'll put a medium here if it'll work optically. I mean, you kind of have to guess and eyeball it and go with what you think will look nice. You know, don't go rigidly with the pattern, but I mean, you know, hey, do your quilt however you want. That's just how I'm doing my crazy thing. So I don't know, so that's pretty nice. Although, see, that's like the same value as this. So here maybe I do need to go with white. So I just cut out some yesterday. Here's kind of an ivory with some little flowers on it. That looks nice. Yeah, see, that's lighter. That looks better. That goes along with my pattern better. So I need something else here that's very pale. What can I use? Let's see. How about this one? This is pretty pale. Yeah, see, that works out well. And then I can, you know, continue building this out according to my plan. So the next row of full squares is going to be medium rather than dark. And I just have this on a rigid placemat so that I can kind of move it around if I need to slide this out of the way to teach a class or whatever. That way my things are undisturbed. I can just set this aside on a chair or whatever, and my layout remains the same. It doesn't get all scrambled up, etc. So let me lay this out, and then once that's done, I'll show you how I assemble the corner. 1/4 of this block. It's very labor intensive. It takes forever, but you know, I mean, that's part of the point of it, is to be a fun meditation and just play with fabric and color and cutting out little shapes and using up scraps and thinking about the time that people sent them to me, or a meaningful piece of fabric like this is from the back of a quilt that I made for my friend, and this is part of a shirt that I made for Craig like 30 years ago. Things like that. There's parts of my mom's shirts in there. As if you've been looking on Facebook, you'll know, that's meaningful to me to have pieces of my mother's shirts in there. Other things that I've had through time that have mattered to me, that it's been fun to incorporate into this giant project that probably won't be done for years and years. But hey, you know what? I mean, it's fun to noodle on and then set it aside and then do something else and then come back to it and, get out the scissors, get out the pattern pieces and play with it a little more, set it aside. I do that. I tend to rotate through projects. I generally don't have one thing I'm working on. I have one thing and then I set it aside, and you get the idea. So anyway, let me finish putting this together and having fun with that, and then I will stitch it together on my old-timey thing. Okay, I've checked all these for duplicates. This one I replaced out because it's too close to one that was similar, so I swapped it for this one, and that's how I got it laid out. So I've got medium here, dark, making kind of the ladder, and then I've got dark here, and then light, and then medium in the corners, and so on. So I think of these as strips as I'm piecing them together. So here's the dark and light one, the medium and dark one. So, and then add the corners later because they don't need to be pieced, obviously. They're just part of the larger thing. So that's how I mentally break this up as I am working on it, to stitch it together so it's not just this jumble of everything ever. And then it helps it line up better, and you'll see why in just a minute. Let me put this here and start piecing this together for you. Ta-da! So I'm thinking of a strip. I'm going to take these in these, kind of this order so that I can keep track of where everything goes. So I often do something like, flowers down, meaning away from me, or, this pattern up, meaning towards me, so that as I'm thinking like leaves down, whatever the pattern is, stars down, or stars up, people down, that kind of thing. Just some memory trick to be able to remember, because in the middle of it, when you flipped it around and you're sewing it, it's like, oh, which way did that go? I had that all lined up, and now I don't know if it's upside down or what. So that's like, a good way to just kind of remember what the heck you're doing. So I just eyeball my seam allowance. Let me move this. I just eyeball my seam allowance. It's basically just a 1/4 inch is with a little bit of this exposed on the edge of the presser foot here. So I just kind of eyeball that this same amount is always on this side of the edge of the foot, and then it's, it's pretty close. It's close enough. I'm not that ridiculous about keeping everything super perfect. So, and it all works out in the wash. As long as I keep that the same, it'll line up. So let me go ahead. And this machine is from the 1800s, and I'm going to continue with my strips of strips, my end strip of the strip. And this is my actual main sewing machine that I use like all the time. I'm used to it. It's simple. Yeah. Do I wish it had buttonholing? Yeah. Do I wish it did back stitching? Yeah. Do I wish it had zigzag? Yeah. But you know what? I mean, I'm thinking I'm going to get another one as soon as they're back in stock, because everyone in the universe has bought sewing machines because of the pandemic. So lay that back where it was, and then work on the next 3, strip of a strip here to be able to do the first strip. I know this seems like super overly complicated. It's really not once you start kind of visualizing it as you're stitching. Anyway, I'm hoping to get a simple new machine that will do buttonholes and back stitching and that kind of stuff, you know, at some point. But for right now, I mean, for quilting, that's perfectly fine. It's not great for certain kinds of garment construction, but, you know, you make do. People use these, you know, forever to make everything, and so that is what I've been doing. And I have a trash can right below, so as I snip off these threads, I just toss them. Seems like I'm throwing them on the floor. I'm not. See, now I got talking, and was it leaves up or leaves down? I'm pretty sure it was that way, so, because that visually makes more sense that the colors I've picked, you know, would lay out that way. So then let me go ahead and do this, and then I'll show you later on when I'm, probably later this evening when I do, I'll show you when I do the rest of the pieces of the block, piecing the pieces together, the strips, how that all goes together, and how I match up the points. Because people have said, well, the match is so great, your matched points are so great. Yeah, you know, it's there's kind of a trick to it, but kind of not. So anyway, so I've finished this little section, and I'm going to press these out flat, like evenly, like open these out in this way and press it, rather than pressing it to one direction or the other, because then it just ends up really, really bulky. So I don't want to do that at this stage. Later, yes, I will do that when I'm assembling the entire quarter block. So let me get a little farther down the road, and I will show you how I, you know, get the different strips pieced together. Okay, so here's these kind of strips put together so you can see the order in which I kind of think of them as I'm working. And then I've got it on this, again, this nice placemat, so I can just take the whole thing, pick it up, and bring it over to my ironing board. Yay! And then, so I'm going to, you know, press these flat and then put these 5 pieces together into one of these blocks here, like that guy, or, you know, the new one that's going to be on this end. So I'll be right back with that. Okay, coming down the home stretch. So I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to show this, but I will try. So we're going to, you know, this is pressed flat with these all open, as I said before. These are going to match up. So the trick here is to get these points to match. So this is where I'm going to finally pin it. I haven't been pinning it this whole time because I don't really need to, but on these 2 seams, yeah, I really do need to pin it. So I'm going to make sure that lines up. Okay, and point it this direction. Now what I do, get my handy dandy magnetic pin dish, which I love, by the way, is I peek at it and see where that point is and where that point is, and I'm going to line those up. And nothing else matters but these 3 little points that I'm lining up. So let me get that all perfect and get a pin in there so that doesn't shift around as I am sewing it, because it will if I don't do that. And then check this one and line that up. Perfect. And if there's a little slack in here, that'll work itself out as you're sewing the seam, within reason. I mean, sometimes you don't get these things exactly on the button, and that's okay. So like this guy's too far over, so I'm just going to kind of get it as close as I can. With this sewing machine in particular, I happen to know that, having trouble, that the bottom, because the bottom, what's called the feed dog, those little teeth that bring the fabric through, that's how it goes through the whole, you know, where it sews it. So it's pulling the bottom layer and not the top layer at the same time. There's only one set of teeth, which means sometimes it will pull the bottom layer of your fabric through just a tiny, tiny increment more than the top, unless it's pinned really, really, really well. But even then, that'll kind of shift around and happen. And so now, because I know that, if there's like a huge amount of slack, I might choose to sew it this direction instead of this direction, knowing that it'll kind of inch back the way it should, but I'm not going to worry about that on something so tiny. Over a really long distance, yeah, that might be a problem, but over this little piece, it's really not. So now I've got these lined up, and I'm going to give that a sew. Okay, so you can really see what I'm doing here. I've got it facing, you know, the other direction. So, so let's sew this, and now you can see exactly that corner that I cut off. It's not necessary, right? Because the edge of the thing is right there, so that's why I clipped those corners off, like I mentioned earlier. So let's make sure this is laying flat, and it is, and I will just, again, just kind of eyeball that extra bit, and here we go. And I'm aiming for that point, right? There. Get that pin out of there. Make sure these are laying flat. No, it's not. See, good thing I checked. I want that to be open, not to one side or the other. So check that as you go. And now my next target is that blue point right there in the white. Making sure I don't run over this pin because I don't want to break my needle because that would be bad. Nope, coming a little high. I might have to rip that back out. Actually, I came in a little too high on that. So let's see what it looks like when I open it out. It might be okay. I just try to be as precise as I can, but I'm not going to lose my mind if I get off a little bit. Okay, let's see how I did here. And this has a thread cutter on the back, but it's old and not very sharp, and I don't want to just completely wear it out, so I just use scissors to snip those threads out. Okay, that one where I came in too high over it. Let's see what it looks like here. Dun, dun, dun. Actually, that looks fine. You know what? And from a distance, you're never going to know that that's a thing. So I'm just going to leave it and not obsess about that. And that's how that half works. And I can come back and fit this part, pin that, and do the other part. And then all that's left is this one remaining triangle on the top. And then that piece would be done. So, and when I press it, I'm going to press it away from the bulk so that it's the stuff that is less bulky is taking more of the bulk. If I press it this direction, oops, if I press it this direction, there's no other seams here, so it can accommodate more of this fabric, whereas if I try to open that out like I have the other seams, then this bulk is going to hit this bulk and this is going to make a big lump right there. But if I press it that way, and here too, press it away from the larger amount, then it'll lay more flat and nice. So that's where we're at with that. Okay, squishing it flat toward the corners, and just to make sure I have a nice crisp seam, I like to turn it over and make sure that I haven't created some kind of a weird crease in there, and kind of again squish it towards the corners to make sure this is laying nice and flat. If there's a little burble in there, it's okay, it doesn't really matter, because when you quilt it, it'll, you know, there's a little bit of thickness when you quilt it anyway. So, and with that, a new baby square is born. Yay! So it can be up here next to the mommy square. But you can see it's a quarter, 1/4 of the next one that's going to have this fabric in the middle. And then these two match up. So there you go. There you have it. And that's how I've been doing this. And I will post pictures on my Facebook, and I probably should use Instagram more, but I don't, and I should, and so I'll probably post some of that on my Instagram also. So anyway, thanks for putting up with this. Definitely goes in the over-explaining category. I will hopefully see you again next time with another exciting adventure from my world. So, like, subscribe, hit the bell, and you'll get notified when I post another one. So, thanks. Bye.